So let me log into the another Jenkins server. Hmm. So here the prerequisite, what was we installed? Helm, that is available. MBN is configured. The environment variables also has been configured, and the Docker software. Okay, the Docker is also installed. Okay, this is what we configured in the previous session, but I'm using the different Jenkins server, but same purpose. Okay, only thing is now what I need to do, inside the Jenkins server. So here in the present working directory, I created a directory called .cube already. This is the one, and inside that we have some different cluster configuration. Okay, this is a different cluster configuration. I'll do cp-p config old, or let me move it to some other location, maybe in the temp. Okay, there is no config file now. So what I'm going to do, I will this is a cluster, and here this Jenkins server. First of all, I need to enable password based authentication in this machine, so that from Google Cloud I can do SCP and copy the config file here, right? Vi etc ssh underscore. In this file I am enabling password based authentication here. Service SSD restart. Okay. Now password EC2-user, give some password. I'm giving a password. Okay. Now what is the IP of this machine? This is the IP, and here scp config, which file you want to copy, that file name, and EC2-user and the IP. I'm giving the default home location of the EC2-user, because already in the temp we just now we moved some config file. So again, I don't want this file also should be copied there and it should be overwritten. That's why I'm storing in a different location. Home EC2-user. Previously we moved it to the temp when we discussed on Friday. So now I'm not using temp location because already the internal config file I moved. Yes. Give password. Okay, copied. We want to see here cd home EC2-user. The config file is available. Okay. Now cp-p. This I'm moving into the var lib jenkins .q. Here I'm moving. Okay,
Praveen,
cp-p.
now,
Yep.
you gave some password here, okay, right?
Hmm.
So what was that password? Because actually when we create a EC2 instance, we use keypair in Linux machine.
Hmm.
What password? Because we don't set any password. What password did you give?
You can give any password for each user. It's up to you. You can give your name, anything.
No, here at this, I mean, here in the back screen, so you gave some password. So where you had already set that password or it's a random one?
Where in Google Cloud,
Yeah.
here,
Yes, yes.
just now I shown you, right? Here I created a password for EC2 user. This is a command.
Okay.
After editing this file, okay, after allowing authentication for through password based authentication, then immediately change the password with password command, because I don't
Okay.
know what was the default password for EC2 user, right? They are giving the key. So that's why with the root, I reset the password EC2 user. Then I gave some password here, and the same password I was using here.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Thanks, man.
So now once the file has been copied, then that file has been placed under varlib Jenkins. Okay. So now, but this file should be ch own um, Jenkins. Jenkins owner should be the Jenkins only, right? But by default, this file is having a owner is EC2 user varlib Jenkins and dot cube config, and better change it to full permission chmod 777 to this file. Okay, so now config file has been copied from Google Cloud to Jenkins server and placed under the Jenkins home directory. Now the final step what we need to do, what we have done in the previous session, because here if you see kubectl get pods -n cube system, you can't see anything over here. That tiller component is not available because it's the new cluster. I thought why unnecessary it should run for 2 days, so that they are deleted the cluster. Again, I created a new cluster. Only thing is, again we need to create a tiller component here. So for that command need to be executed. I'll show you the repository docs Jenkins setup with help. This is a command. Okay, but before that we need to execute these two commands also. Why? Because this is a new cluster. So in the cluster we need to create service account and cluster role. So these two we need to create once again. If you are following the continuation practice, then you can ignore this, because I deleted and again I recreated. That's the reason I'm recreating this one. Okay, tiller service account has been created, and now cluster role binding is also created. As I said, these are giving permission to tiller, that it's like a root privileges for tiller on the Kubernetes cluster, because whenever Helm is telling something to do, then its tiller will take care of whatever Helm is giving the information, and tiller will deploy or whatever delete or create anything, everything it will do. So it should have authority to do it on the cluster. And this one here on the Google Cloud Console, just you need to use Control C, Control V. Okay, so don't try to right click and paste it. Just use Control V here. It's created. Now once it is done, then this command need to be executed on Jenkins. So please read this description when you're doing anything. This two should be executed on master, means cluster, and this will be on the Jenkins server. Now the copy, we have copied this file already. Now we need to run this on the Jenkins server. Helm version. Okay, it is not showing for cluster. Okay, we need to log in as a Jenkins. su-jenkins. Helm version. Okay, for server it is not getting because it's not connected to any server. So once we enable communication, then only it will enable to communicate. Cancel. So now it should create a tiller component. Okay. Helm reset. Mhm. Because this was already using with some other cluster.
Praveen, uh, did initialization fail here?
Yes, because already was it was connected to some different cluster previously, so that's why I'm resetting it. So that's why I use this Helm reset -F force. So just waiting for the output to come.
Okay, okay.
Why it's not trying to reach this one? Google Cloud.
Did you log into Google Cloud and check that cluster is up and running?
Yes, from there itself we copied
Yeah, got it.
this one.
Yes.
It's created, but not able to reach Google Cloud, and it's saying no such file or directory spaces. Access token command cloud config. I think there is a problem with the config file. Here it is showing, again it is showing 35 IP. Somewhat it was showing 34 IP range. Here it is showing 34 and here it's showing 35. Okay, is it showing two IPs? Okay, so we are connected to this Cloud Shell, right? So Cloud Shell config file is storing two clusters. So previously which I created, this is that cluster information and this is the present cluster information. But when I copied this config file, so which it contains two cluster config files, because where I'm trying to create this one, this is Cloud Shell. Here it's a local. So here in this config file, it's appended the current config file also. So which contains two config files. So what it is doing, when we copied this to the Jenkins server, it is trying to reach the older one also, which is showing now when I'm trying to reach Helm version. See, I think it is getting some problem. So now what I need to do, I'll do one thing. But even though if it contains two, it try to connect the first one itself. It should not give any problem. Why it is giving problem? Now it contains only information about one. Let me see if this works. But it should work even though if it contains both the information, because whichever is on the top in the config file, it will connect to that particular cluster. So again, I'm copying into the Jenkins server. Ch mode 777. So move it to the var lib Jenkins. Hmm, okay. Yes. Okay, now it's showing only single cluster information. Let me see what is error it will give. Executing access token command. Okay, helm. Okay, sorry guys, there was a power lost, so again it came back. So I'm just going through. So the whatever the command which we are trying to execute on this cluster, so maybe it might not providing the this one cluster -c project. Maybe so I'll check it later. But anyhow, to discuss about the CA job, as of now we don't require cluster because right now we are trying to do the continuous integration. Okay, so integration part. So for that we need to have the Jenkins server. So what I'm going to do, I'll first of all I log into this. I mean I will open the dashboard of this Jenkins. Guys, can you able to hear me, right?
Yes, you are good.
Yes, yes.
Yep. Okay. So let me log into the Jenkins server. Okay. So as I said, so we prepared everything. So let me discuss. So now, whatever we discussed till now, we discussed about the Kubernetes components, different components which we use in the real time. And the main purpose of that Kubernetes is to deploy the applications in case if they are the microservices, then we can deploy it on the Kubernetes, right? So here, how we are going to deploy, that is very, very important. We discussed individual resources of the Kubernetes, but now we are going to talk about how we are going to deploy in the real time. If we are a DevOps engineer or we got an opportunity to work on the Kubernetes, maybe we started migrating our applications from virtual machines to Kubernetes cluster. See, if they are running on virtual machines, obviously they are like monolithic applications. So when they are trying to migrate it on Docker Kubernetes, then they might be converted that code into some microservice. Why? Because the complete legacy application will not be deployed onto the Kubernetes cluster. Then there is no use, right? So when you are dividing into the microservices, then only you are going to get lot of benefits if you are deploying it on the cluster, Kubernetes cluster, because each individual microservice you are going to deploy, upgrade, everything, lot of benefits are available, auto scale, right? So now how it is possible? So whenever, as I said, if we have 15, assume 15 microservices for your application, which previously it was maybe one or two virtual machines it was running. Now when it converted into microservice, in real time it will be huge. Maybe 50, 100 microservices also will be there to run your application. Now for every microservice you have an repo, right? Repos will be there. Every repo will be there, and these repos will be available in all the branches in the sense master branch, develop branch, release branch, right? So different branches. I hope you guys are aware about the branching strategy. So based on that, each branch is for different environment, testing environment, staging environment, pre-prod environment, and the release will be the release, the production environment. This way we can have. So whenever the developers are writing the code, so we'll take one example, one branch, okay, whatever it may be. So if you are taking one branch, so this is an SCM, source code management. It can be anything. It can be Bitbucket, or it can be GitHub, or it can be anything. Now developers, what they'll do, they will write the code, and whenever they check in, code check-in happens, then immediately it will Jenkins will pick up it. So what Jenkins will do? Jenkins will do the integration part. So we are taking the example here is Java applications. Okay, so when Java application we are taking, it should be Maven build tool should be there. So inside this, we already configured prerequisites. Maven is already installed for build tool. So that what it will do, it will integrate the application. It will create an artifact. It will do the test cases. It will build and will create an artifact. Whether it's a jar file or var file or it's an ER file, depends upon the application. Maven will do that. Okay. Once it is done, now in this Kubernetes environment, what we are trying to do after finishing this one, creating a Docker image, and this image we are pushing to any artifact, any repository. It can be Docker Hub, or it can be Nexus, it can be JFrog, or it can be the cloud environment. Like in the cloud also, we have artifactories. We don't need to create a server. See, if you are managing artifactory, then you need to maintain the high availability, right? You need to maintain, for example, if you are taken, you took one server and you install Nexus, then you need to maintain the HA for that servers also. Because if anytime this goes down, then you cannot able to pull the var files or Docker images, right? So you need to maintain high availability. Instead of that, if you are taking cloud service, we have ACR in Azure, GCR in Google, and ECR in the AWS. If you take that, their responsibility to maintain the high availability in the backend. So we'll create image and we'll push the Docker image inside the repository here. So here we are going to have Nexus. Now this is the Nexus repository, or maybe in our case it will be Docker Hub. So then when we configure CD job, it is going to deploy it on the cluster. Okay, so it will pull the Docker image and it will deploy inside this cluster. This is what we are going to do. So now we are going to do this part, CI job. Okay, so CI job, when we are talking about the CI job here in the same account, we have an repository. If you see, this is a CloudFreak repository. So here we can see the code. This is one of the Spring Boot application for pet clinic. Pets. Okay, for pets, it's a clinic related application. Spring Boot open source application we have. So this application we are going to create an integration. It will create an var file and jar file, var or jar, and then it will be deployed. So now this is the code. If you see pom.xml, this is an ambient commands. Okay, and this src directory is a source code. If you see src, I hope if you are done DevOps and if you completed Maven, you might know about this src. Main is the main code, and developers will write test cases. Okay, if you see here test cases, they will write some test cases here, and with the help of JMeter, it is going to do the test cases. Now, if you go back, this is a main code. Okay, so resources, if you see here in the resources tab, you can see all these things, and this is related to the database. Means this application needs a database. So what it will do, when you deploy this application, it will create a database, and automatically the database will be connected to this application. Why? Because if this website entering all the pets details, owner, address, all these things, so it need to store that in the data. So backend in the database, it is getting stored. So that details also available over here itself. Okay, so mysql.properties, from the properties file, I have told you in the config maps. So if you open this mysql.properties file, so this is database, means application to connect the database. This is the database, which database, and the URL localhost, because it's getting created in the same application, and database is creating in the same container or same pod. That's why it's taking as a localhost. Okay, so the to connect that username and password, it is provided. Okay, So database is also getting installed. How database is getting installed? If you go to the main, where it is, maybe in the main page, Docker compose file. If you see Docker compose file, this is creating Docker database. Okay, means inside when the application is getting deployed with the help of this Docker compose, it is creating a database. We are not bothered about this. Okay, automatically internally everything is taking care. And main important is this code, the source code. If you see here, which contains a Java application, and these are the test cases. So now inside this I have kept some files. This is my file and this is my directory. Remaining all things you can get it from the online also. Okay, if you go to the Google Pet Clinic GitHub, if you search here, so you can see Spring Boot application. This is a Spring Boot application. Okay, I think now they have added see uh, some files. Okay, but here you don't see Jenkins file and Docker directory, because those two file and directory has been kept by me inside my own repository for CI job. Okay, so remaining all things you can see pom.xml, mn command, Docker compose file, all these things you can see. But if you compare here, you can see extra Docker and Jenkins file. So this is written by me, Jenkins file. Now we need to read this. If you are going with freestyle project, you can go. If you want to write it in a Jenkins file, you need to write it in this way. So okay, this is a declarative pipeline, not scripted based. What is the difference? How can you find out whether it's a script based or declarative? By looking at this, how can you tell whether it's a declarative or script based?
I think stages will be there. Mm,
As a DevOps engineer, the main thing you are going to work is Jenkins. Maximum you'll work
yeah.
on Jenkins. So you should be aware of Jenkins, because lot of pipeline scripts. Nowadays, everyone is expecting pipeline scripts.
Yep.
No one is asking to configure freestyle jobs or Maven projects. Okay, so you need to know the difference between how to find out. If you don't know the difference, then how can you write? Means you did not write. Anyone did not write a pipeline script till now. See, for script-based pipeline, here starts with node. For declarative pipeline, it will start with pipeline. With that, you can understand. Okay, this is a declarative pipeline. Okay, so here in this pipeline, I have defined 4 stages. First, what it will do, it will clone. In the pipeline, you don't need to mention it. Okay, here, because already while we configuring the job, there will define the clone option. So here we no need to do that. Automatically it will clone. And then what it is doing, it is clean install package mvn. It's executing command mvn clean install package. Okay, so what it will do, it will clean means whatever it is there, it will delete, and it will create a new artifact, new package. Once that package is created, so this what it is doing, copy artifact. In this stage, what it is doing, copy artifact means um, so whenever it is getting cloned, for example, this is your Jenkins server. So where lib Jenkins, this is the default directory of Jenkins. So whenever the Jenkins user is cloning the repository, so what it is trying to do, what is the path of this one? Whenever it's clone, this is a directory structure, right? This is a, when we clone, wherever you are cloning, this is a directory structure. Okay, so it is like Docker, Jenkins file, and src and some form.xml xyz. These are some defaulted directory structure, right? So when you're cloning this, everything will be under this here. So under varlib Jenkins, the Jenkins, whenever it is getting cloned, varlib Jenkins under this, where it will be get created under workspace, and under this it will get created with a job name. Let's say if it is a job name is pipeline job. Under this directory structure gets created like Docker, and the complete files will be available. Jenkins file, all this complete directory structure will be available here this way, right? So when this is done, it is going to create a target directory here. Wherever maven command is executing, it is going to create a new target directory. I'm not sure how many of you practiced maven. So when you do maven, if you go to, for example, web app, cd web app, and if you execute mvn clean install or package, mvn clean package or mvn package, what it will do, in the web app directory itself, it will create a directory called target. Under this, it will create a artifactory, that tar file, jar file or var file, it will get created. So here also it will get created one directory called target, and this target directory, under this it will create a jar file. Okay, so here you go to the Jenkins file, the second stage. So what it is doing, so that target file is copying into the Docker directory, means these are on the same working directory. So from this location to this location, it is copying from target to whatever the jar it gets created. So that's why we provided star.jar. So anyhow, you can see why I provided this information. PW means you can see when we execute this, it will display what is your present working directory, and it will copy this jar file to Docker directory. Why it need to copy to the Docker directory? Because the purpose of this Docker directory here, to create the Docker image. So inside this Docker directory, I provided a Docker file. So if you open a Docker file, it's very simple. It's taking base images OpenJDK. So we discussed in the Docker, we can take any images, but lightweight images we need to take. And why I am choosing OpenJDK? Because this is a Java application. For Java application, obviously JDK is mandatory. So instead of, if I'm taking from CentOS, then again I need to add another step to install the JDK. Instead of that, if I'm taking OpenJDK itself as an image, we have images with OpenJDK also. If I take that, I need to add another step to install the this one JDK software. So that's why I'm using this OpenJDK. And when I'm typing this, executing this add star.jar, means where, from where it is expecting. It's, I'm adding this command because to copy the jar file from present working directory inside this Docker container. When this Docker file is executed, what it will do, wherever this Docker file is getting executed, it will expect this jar file and to copy. So if the jar file is somewhere around here, and in this location, let's say manually, if we are doing var lib Jenkins workspace pipeline job Docker. Okay, if I do this, inside this Docker file is there. So Docker build -t dot. This way we need to give to create the Docker image, because Docker file is inside this location. So what it will do, Docker file in this location, wherever you are, in that location only it will try to search this jar file. because here we did not give any absolute path here. It will not take. In the Docker file, you want to, while creating a container, if you want to copy a container from your host machine to your container, it should be in the same working directory. If it is somewhere other different location, then you cannot give here that location like slash tmp or slash root slash some xyz. That details it cannot copy from there. I am not sure how many of you tried to do that. You can try when you're practicing Docker. So it should be in the wherever the Docker file is there, in that same working directory itself, whatever the file or directory is there, it will be copied. If it is in some other location, it cannot be copied. Okay, so that's why we are doing what, copying this jar file from to here, so it will be available in the Docker. So then only this can be executed properly. Okay, and this is to run the Java application. Okay, runtime. So now that's why we created a directory called Docker here, and so that I mentioned the Docker file. Okay. This is a Jenkins file, and this is what we are discussing now. Okay, this is copying artifact. So once it is done, from one location to the different location, we are copying internal in the Jenkins server itself. It is happening. After that, build Docker image. Now what it is doing? This line docker dot build, and this is the location. Okay, so this is the repository name we are giving, like whatever the repository you have. This is a Docker repository, and this is a dot slash docker means it is executing on this Docker directory. So what it will do, it will give this tag. Okay, and then it is pushing to this registry, and this is called credentials. Okay, so how you are going to create credentials, I will show you. Mostly tomorrow I will show you, or let me show you now. In Jenkins server, we have an option called credentials. Manage credentials. You see here Jenkins, open this global credentials. Here you can mention add credentials. Okay, so here you can give username and password, and here ID, whatever the ID you are giving, that name you need to provide it inside the, where it is here. Okay, means it is taking these credentials. Okay, so these credentials it is taking, and it will connect to the Docker hub, and the image is pushing. So here image is getting created with this tag, and then it is getting pushed. How it is getting pushed? So if you see this value $env dot build number means what it will do, whatever the job number is there, if it is a 2 is a job number, with the tag 2 it is go and push the image. Why? Because it should not overwrite in the repository. Whenever the code check-in happens, it will create an image, and should not store with the same name, right? It will overwrite. So extension, the build number is going to be there. So what are the build job will be there, with that it will go and create it. Okay, so this is the credentials we need to create here in the Jenkins server. Already you see here I created this Jenkins server credentials. I mean, this is a Docker of credentials. You see here, this has been created. Okay, tomorrow I will delete it again. I will create these credentials. Okay, so that your Jenkins server can go and connect and can push that. And another important thing is here under the tools I have given Maven and JDK. These are the names. From where I got these names? So these names I got it from the Jenkins server. So in the Jenkins server, if you go to manage Jenkins, Global tool configuration. Here, obviously, you are going to configure Maven and JDK. Okay. If you see JDK installation, this is the name. This is the name I provided, and this is the Java home. And if you see Maven, this is the name of Maven, and this is a home path. Okay. These two things you need to configure in the Jenkins. You are telling this to the Jenkins. This is the Maven home, and this is the JDK home. So these names you need to provide it inside this one. Otherwise, it will not work. If you give even though M caps here, it will not work. So what are the names you provided in the Jenkins for Maven and JDK? The same thing should be provided here. Okay. And this is the Docker of credentials. Now, if you see in the Jenkins server, already for previous batch, I shown CI job and CD job. Now, once again, I'll create a new job. Okay. It's very simple. Go to the new item. And before this, one more thing I would like to show you. Manage Jenkins, manage plugins. Please note it down. Uh, 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 there should be a Docker. Why Docker Commons is there? Where is Docker pipeline? Sorry, I'm checking in the updates. Installed one. Okay. In the installed one, if I check Docker, this plugin by default will be not available. Compulsory, you need to install this plugin, Docker pipeline. Otherwise, your CI job will not work. Please install this plugin. Okay. Now
Git
I'm going
plugin is
back.
also required, right?
Those plugins will be by default available. Only you need to install Docker pipeline plugin.
Okay. I think
Remaining all the
EC2 is also
plugins by
required.
default. Sorry.
EC2 plugin is also required here.
No, nothing. Only Docker
Okay.
pipeline plugin install.
Okay.
So I'm creating a new job. Pet clinic demo CI. This is the name I'm giving. So here I'm selecting pipeline. Okay. Select this pipeline. And come down here. You are not going to select any of these things. Just select here pipeline script from SCM. If you select this one, you need to copy that Jenkins file over here. Instead of that, if you do this from SCM means I'm telling my pipeline is in the source code. So from there it should be executed. And SCM is a Git. In your real time, so obviously it's a private. So you need to provide the credentials here. So your credentials should be configured. In real time, it will be your domain credentials. Means single credentials will work for SCM, single credentials will work for Nexus, single credentials work for anything, right? Domain credentials that you need to add in your Jenkins so that you can select here. But for us, it's an public repository, so we don't need to worry about that. So here I need to clone this repository, select this one. This is a repository, copy. Okay, and master branch, just select the branch. By default it's in master branch. In your real-time environment, you will be deploying in different environments, right? So you just check which branch you are trying to deploy, that you need to select here. And second thing is, this is the Jenkins file, script path. See, this Jenkins file is directly available inside this repo. That's why we are giving here direct Jenkins file. In case if this Jenkins file is available under some other directory, means let's say inside the XYZ directory, again inside that some other directory, then you should give that path here. Why I'm giving directly Jenkins file here? Because it is exactly under the repo. That's why I'm giving here Jenkins file. Otherwise, you need to give, let's say, ABC, some directory, CD, something like this. Whatever the location is there, that way. Otherwise, the script will fail and your job will fail because Jenkins file is not found. So this way you need to give. That's it. Apart from that, nothing to add. Save. Okay. And now let me build this job. Open this console output. Started. Okay. See present working directory. As I said, workspace slash, this is the job name. I was talking here, right? Workspace job name. Under that, it will be cloned. All these directories, files, everything will be cloned here. So test cases, it started executing state test cases. If your machine doesn't have enough memory, then it will not work properly because it needs more than 1 GB of RAM. So that's why we selected T2.small, which contains 2 GB of RAM for Jenkins server. Okay, pushed, success. Okay, so now once the build is successful, build means what? It's created a jar file. Okay, so it's created, if you see here, I was talking about this one under Jenkins workspace pet clinic. This is a job name, target. This is a jar file name. We don't know how it gets created. That's why we were giving star.jar in the Jenkins file. So where it got created? Under the target. Where is this target? Exactly under this job name. So that's why here um, we did not give any absolute path, because in the present working directory I've shown you where we were there exactly. So this jar file is getting copied to Docker. Okay, if you see here, present working directory is this, and cp-r under the target, this file got created and it copied to Docker. Once it is created, copied to Docker, Docker build-t, Praveen Corvi is the repository in the Docker hub, and this is the name of the image. It's created with the help of this one in the Docker file, and then it's created a image. If you see here, with the latest tag it created. Once it is created with the latest tag, then what I have done, I connected to Docker login -u. This is the username and this is the registry. Okay, and after that login successful is done, then Docker tag, I'm giving the tag. Okay, so Praveen Kovi Pet Clinic, and this is, if you see, instead of letters, now we are giving tag as a 1. Why? Because with the help of this one, so it's connected and it's giving the tag. Now Docker push registry.hub.docker.com, and this is the image name. What are the image name we created? We pushed it. If you want to see, hub.docker.com. What I need to do here, select all squares with traffic lights. Okay, so if you see 4 minutes ago, updated 4 minutes ago. See all. So this is the latest one. 4 minutes ago, this was updated. If I execute once again, job 2 gets created. Then again, it will come and it will store inside this one. So this is my repository which I created. And this is the image name, pet clinic. So this, whenever you are, see in your environment, if it is Nexus. So what are the Nexus repo you have with that, and what is the image name you want to create with that? We already practiced Docker. So here, first if you see Docker build-t means what are the image we are creating, we are giving this image name so that this name should be your Nexus repo or artifact repository. Then only you can able to push, otherwise you cannot push. If you see Docker tag and it is giving 1, so when you do Docker push, then only it is go and push there. If you're giving some other name here, okay, so some other name here, then it will not able to push to the repository.